Welcome everyone to the first ever Kerrang face-to-face. My name is Luke, I'm digital editor at Kerrang, and today I'm joined by ROU from Shikari. Make some noise and wave.
Ah, hello.
Hello man, how are you doing? Where are you today? Where are you self-isolating?
I'm all right. I'm in North London, very dreary, miserable North London. Just got back from the supermarket, did my weekly shop. Got nice and wet, so yeah. But I'm doing
as dismal as it could be for the most surreal album release day
yeah.
of all time.
Yeah, I'm trying to like do some like normal things to make it seem less surreal. But yeah, it's very odd.
Are you sort of coping with self-isolation well? Are you sort of comfortable in your own company? Are you keeping busy?
Yeah, I think I'm all right really. Like, you know, I'm lucky that most people I know who got the virus have like come through absolutely fine. I'm almost certain I've had it, and I've been an asymptomatic person. So yeah, I'm very lucky in that respect. Other than that, like just living this solitary life, just me and my cat, just hanging out and doing promo, basically trying to yeah, promote the album in any way we can, seeing as we had to cancel like everything around it. So yeah, we appreciate you guys for having us and for doing this.
Obviously, yeah. So you mentioned your cat. One of the first bits of promo you did was the acoustic performance on Kerrang's Instagram and Facebook, and yeah, your cat I think stole the show. Really, everyone, most people were obsessed.
Yeah, anytime I do a live stream, like there's always at least like 50% of the comments going like, "No one cares about you. Just show Freya. Just show us Freya. Just show us." She's right here sleeping, but as soon as I'm on my laptop and it's quite precarious, I don't know if I can. I don't want to like lose my connection or whatever. She's there. Somewhere. Little fluffy ball. She's had a tough day today.
Oh god.
So, yeah.
So speaking of those like acoustic performances you've been doing, was it weird that the first time you performed any of these new songs in public, was not how they're meant to be heard at all?
Yeah. I mean, it was we'd started practicing together. Or we were like just about to properly, but we'd started programming and getting ready to start running through the songs like I think the week before the proper lockdown, and just the vibe that we were feeling was just like pure excitement, like exhilaration. Just couldn't wait to be able to play them live. And then yeah, like the first taste of actually performing them is just me with an acoustic. It's like a totally different experience. Yeah, just very solitary, very like, I don't know, just feel sort of, yeah, lonely, me and my little guitar, but like, it's been fun and everyone's like been digging them and stuff. So yeah.
So how does it feel now then? Now we are on album release day. Obviously you finished the album, I think in January, so you've been living with it for a few months. Like, how does it feel sort of now that the world is out, has it in its hands?
It's just surreal. Like, I don't know whether people think that, when you've been doing this for a while, it doesn't really like have any effect if you see your songs on like Spotify or whatever. Like, but it's still so surreal. Like finally when the album appears and you just like press play, you hear it differently. It's really strange because I've spent Christ knows how many hours on these tracks over the last year, just over and over again, like in every little minor detail. But then when you press play on your streaming service, it's like it's a different experience. It's like, oh my god, it's out. Like people are having this same experience now. Yeah, so it's mad.
So I imagine obviously everyone joining us today has been listening to the album probably on repeat all day, as they should be. Like, what do you want people to take away from the record?
Oh god, I don't know. I think at a time like this, it's like I'm happy for them to take away whatever they want. Do you know what I mean? Whatever little bit of like positivity or like light they can like garner from the music. And like people will embrace it in like different ways to different degrees. Like some people will just enjoy it as a a piece of music as a bit of escape or something. Some people will like delve into every tiny detail. I've already been reading the tweets this morning of just like people already noticing these tiny things, these little Easter eggs and little things that we put in, and it's that's amazing to hear. But yeah, for me, like art is a gift. It is like, you know, it's a gift that you sort of have to pay for, I suppose, but it's still like it's still something that like we are kind of just like giving out to the world. And once we're finished with it, it's you can embrace it and like absorb it in whichever way you want, and put whatever use you want into it. So, you know, if you want to if it's going to be your exercise album, your jogging album whilst you're doing your Joe Wicks or whatever, cool. If it's going to be your shagging album, your quarantine shagging, I mean, whatever, like I don't mind. Or if it's going to help people in whatever way, then that's amazing. But yeah, once it's out there, it's just, we have to just let it go. Just let it go.
I guess we'll hear from one of the fans now who submitted a question. I think Becky, are you there? Can you give us a wave? So I'll say my anonymous producer can find you.
Okay, so my question was, how and when do you decide what kind of vibe the album's going to take? So do you kind of figure what you want to kind of cover and the sort of like feel that you want to get out from the get-go, like, or does it kind of just progress to that?
Hi, Becky.
Hello.
I think people will probably be quite surprised at how unplanned and instinctual the whole process is. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that I've ever sat down for like any project and like had the sort of end goal or any sort of shape of, you know, imagination in my mind of what this will actually end up being. Yeah. At the start, it's just this big anxious like shitting hell. We've just climbed this mountain and now we've got to do another one. Like, how is this possible? It's so there's never really, it's only once the ideas start coming in for like, you know, just little skeleton songs and like demos and little rough lyrical ideas, and then you maybe get a sort of vibe for a bigger picture that will just sort of emerge out of it, really. I think the only thing that we consciously knew about this one was that we wanted to really broaden it. And I mean, we've been saying this for a while, but like try and make something that felt like definitive, that kind of had a nod of the hat, a knowing sort of tip of the hat to every era, to every album. Yeah, and try and do something a bit all encompassing. But yeah, other than that, it was just like, yeah, a process of kind of just tiptoeing forward, you know, in a measured way, and then something will begin to arise in terms of making it feel like one entity.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough.
Thanks, Becky. You mentioned like the breadth of the record, and obviously how it's, you know, obviously you a tip of the hat to all sort of eras of Shikari, and I think you said that, you know, that came from you going back over your, you know, your lyric books over the past few years. Like, did that process of revisiting everything sort of bring up any surprises for you?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was purely just difficult trying to get back in that mindset, you know, especially like going back to the first album and like trying to remember what the songs were like really about and like what inspired them and stuff. You know, it was like, just felt like a detective at some points. And there were some surprising things, like just kind of, I remember saying at the time when we bought Dear Future Historians out that we'd sort of bought the kind of this sort of what's the word? This kind of idea that people had of us, that like the first album was a bit of an anomaly, like there was no social commentary on it or anything. I think we sort of bought that because we just heard it so much that Common Dread was this big like, oh my God, they're a political band now. Like, but it was just mad, like reading back the lyrics and just remembering like that, even though it was a lot more kind of subtle and kind of camouflaged, I think that all the same themes were there, especially the theme of unity and the theme of like perseverance, which is essentially the main two pillars of what Shikari have ever written about, like trying to encourage community, and trying to be a fuel for people to keep going, perseverance, basically.
Yeah. Did you have like a favorite period that you sort of look back on and went, oh, this, you know, not that that's when your creative peak was, because obviously that's where we are now, but like when you sort of went back over the albums, it was like, oh fuck, I remember this song. You know, this was, you know, a favorite moment for you.
Oh God. Yeah, I mean, I think anytime we did something like this that felt especially novel, and anything that was particularly difficult just to get down. Like, I mean, the first one that came to my mind was Constellations, just because it was quite different for us. It was very, very somber, very sort of, you know, it's trying to be epic, really. But at the same time, I remember that the lyrics being made right at the last minute, and I was like, I'm and ahhing and just not knowing how this piece of music that was so emotional, it was just dripping in emotion, like how I was going to actually write something that encapsulated the way the music made me feel. I think the pressure just mounted and mounted, and I'd left it way too late. And there was a lot of luck, I think, there in the end that we sort of, I feel like we got it right. But yeah, I think, yeah, those moments where it's like, are we're losing this, you know, it's like, yeah, it's weird.
So obviously the album opens with the lyrics like, is this a new beginning or are we close to the end? Like, do you think that's a phrase that could be applied to where Shikari are at now? Like, are we seeing this as like the dawning of a new age? Is that a phrase that resonates with you creatively?
I think I've probably felt that more with The Spark, to be honest, because it was like really, it felt like a freeing moment of just like getting rid of like shackles of people's perceptions of us, or like a limited sort of blinkered perception of us. So that felt like the kind of new beginning, and the confidence that album gave us, I think, then enabled us to do this album, which obviously there's a lot of new ground on it, but it feels more kind of wholly and like an all-encompassing version of Enter Shikari, like more so than we've ever done. So it feels like not so much a new beginning, but maybe just an evolution or like a growth. Yeah, we're in our growth period. We're in excrescence.
Awesome. I think we'll go to another fan question now. I say, is it Jago? I hope I've pronounced that name correctly.
Gergo, hi.
Hey.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for making music that feels very much like it was made for me. And this is good to say to all bands who are here. I see Rory isn't here, probably in the bathroom, whatever. But my question, sorry. My question is, when I first heard the album's title, obviously I looked it up online and thought it was a quote or something. And I saw that it was a book's title about Russian oligarchs. And I was wondering if there's any relation to that, or was that the first thing, was the lyric first, or did you read the book? Or if the lyric was first, and how did you react when you found out that there was an actual book with the same exact title?
Yeah, it was unbeknownst to me that there was this book. And there's a few things actually, like slight variations, but Assassin's Creed has a very similar kind of quote headline thing in it as well. It was nothing is true and everything is permitted, I think. And there's a few like, yeah, other bits of like, you know, popular culture where a similar kind of phrase has been used. But yeah, but I didn't know, I can't say I kind of took inspiration off any of those things, although Assassin's Creed is a great game. And I hear this book is great as well. I'll have to read it, get my knowledge of Russian oligarchs up.
Yeah, thanks again.
Cool, thank you, man.
Yes, thank you. The record itself, obviously, judging by, obviously on the album title as well, like, is about possibility, like positive and negative, and primarily the latter. Like, do you find, more influence in sort of the negatives of life? Do you think?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, it's almost like a common conception that the best art comes from like the biggest sort of hardships, isn't it? I don't know whether I agree with that or not really. I think with Shikari, I try and aim for the middle, like, or not necessarily the middle, but like just being a reflection of what's happening and trying to just be realistic. Like I don't want to offer optimism for no reason, like hope for hope's sake, like for false hope or whatever. Like I'm not interested in being like I don't know, I don't want to, you know, call anyone out or anything, but you know, those bands who are just like singing about whatever is, you know, small thing is making them happy, and it's clearly a time that there's a lot to write about that's wrong with the world and perhaps should be addressed. But yeah, I think we're at the same time, I couldn't be in a doom metal band. I couldn't write just about misery. So I think that's one of the best things about being a songwriter in Shikari, is that our palette is so broad. We can attempt to traverse like the full emotional landscape with our music. We're not hemmed in to be just making like pop punk or just making doom metal or whatever. We're people have allowed us to just like meander around and like include all these types of music and this like diverse range of the musical spectrum that means we can convey all sorts of emotions. And I think that's what really excites me, really, being such a sort of fidgety person creatively, like being able to have that scope, that breadth is just so always so exciting.
Did you find that you were having to sort of scrap lyrical ideas almost on a daily basis when you were writing it, just because the world was changing at such a ridiculous pace and things that you were writing just weren't relevant anymore?
I suppose, yeah, that can happen lyrically, but I try and not write about very, very specific like events. I've always tried to kind of step back from everything and see like the kind of broader connections with things, right? You know, rather than writing about very specific people or events. I mean, there's definitely things that are going to date, but I think they were worth saying. I mean, like the line that's coming to mind, I suppose, is the one in when waltzing off the face of the earth. Like the line about dead kids on the beach and bigoted parents deciding what teachers teach. Like those two things are very clearly like, well, one was last year and another was a few years ago. So that they're you know, they're sort of pinpoints in time, but I think they're interesting because it shows like, as a society, what do we accept? And those two moments were, I think, quite like, they were like pinnacles of like the problems that we're facing. And it was just interesting to see how society reacts to that. So even when I'm using like specifics, I'm trying to like use it, you know, in a wider sort of perspective, I suppose.
Yeah. So I think we'll go to another question now. This one's from Rob, who I think you may know already.
Hello. Hi, Rao.
Hey up, Rob.
Kerrang. How's it going? We got the launch party going on here. Casa Love Shack, Dreamers Hotel. Long time caller, first time listener. I've got my question here written down, if that's all right for you, because I would forget it otherwise. In the demoing process, lots of the parts are programmed to then be played live later, either in the recording studio or shows, the keyboards and drum parts, for example. When you're coming up with these parts, do you have any consideration for the person that is going to have to actually play them?
I guess honestly, no, not really. As you fully well know. Yeah, there's.
I got like seven arms or something, you know, and 3 legs that, well, some would say.
Like, yeah, I think drums is the hardest instrument out there, really. Like, so So when I'm sitting here in the flow state, not really thinking and just being like, yeah, that works. And then I send something to you, and then we realize that, yeah, actually this is either incredibly difficult or simply unplayable. Yeah, I don't really think about that at the time. But I think, like, yeah, once I give stuff to you, we work well together at making it playable, don't we?
We hash it out and see what's humanly possible and what needs to be, I don't know, maybe an electronic part or something.
Yeah. Do I get to ask Rob a question?
Yeah.
Apart from really wanting you to give us a tour of the amazing decor that you have. Where's TV? Yeah, there's TV.
Keep this guy entertained. He's desperate for a walk today. Trapped in the house with one walk a day is not his idea of a good time, I have to say.
No. You should encourage him to do like a you know how people are doing like marathons in their gardens and stuff. You should get him to do one just running around your house.
Yeah, that'd be good. Have you seen our garden though?
Right, yeah.
I wouldn't really call it garden, like a square foot.
Get dizzy quickly.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you about the drum production on the record, because it's like it was one real considered decision early on, wasn't it, that we really wanted to up the drum production. So I wondered if you could maybe speak about
19 hours.
Thank you. About how we did that, and all the details within that.
Yeah, well, it was a choice really of between like them sounding perfect and exactly how we wanted them, or like getting the feel and the vibe from takes. And I've never been one to care too much about getting the one perfect take of a whole song. I've been more about sort of delve deeply into the individual sounds of each hit, each I don't know, zone into like each drum and sharpen each sound to make it as pure and perfect as possible. So that's something that we dedicated many hours to. It was a lot of fun because I remember being a lot more inventive with this album than previous in how we come around to like snare sounds in particular. Like, so you come up with something in the demo that it would be a snare, but wouldn't really sound like a snare. So I'm like, I think we can get that by whacking a stick on the side of the drum, but to get the snare maybe sort of shuffling a pillow or something up against the mic, you know. But then we can sort of compress it and then maybe use the room mic for this or the close mic for that, and sort of just piece it together and really sculpt each individual sound to make it as perfect as possible. And I think that was a lot of fun. I don't know about you, but it got my juices going more than any other album has.
Yeah, it's definitely the most adventurous I think we've ever been with the drums. I remember just walking in the studio and seeing your cymbals all over the floor, like literally a sea of cymbals. Like we got so many like brought in and hired, and
you got to find the perfect one, right? I mean, I've got quite a lot of cymbals, but the lovely folk at Sabian, before any time we go into the studio, I always say, guys, can I just go down to your warehouse and pick out a load of toys? And I don't know if it's going to be on the album or not, but it's good to have that choice. And most of them went on, to be honest.
Yeah.
Nice.
To have options.
So I think we'll throw to another question now. This one is from Alina. Are you there, Alina? Yes, no?
Alina!
Yeah, do you hear me? Yeah? Is it fine? Yeah. Hi, guys. So it was a really great album. Yeah, thank you. It was already out in Russia a bit earlier than in the UK, so we heard it at first, and it was amazing. I didn't really sleep this night and I had classes this morning, so it was definitely worth it. So yeah, my question was about the classical part of the album, like Elegy for Extinction and all that. So was there any inspiration for that parts, like any composers or some pieces of classical music, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very lucky to be brought up with all sorts of music, but my parents had quite a classical collection. So, I mean, Tchaikovsky, one of your guys, like
Yeah.
I mean, incredible. I can remember listening to a load of his symphonies as a kid. But then like Prokofiev,
Yeah.
well, on Elegy specifically, you can hear a lot of Vivaldi. You can hear a lot of Elgar, especially in the chorale section. Yeah, there's kind of all sorts going on there, really.
Yeah, great, really. And it was really great to listen to it. And it isn't really a Shikari thing as I thought, but well, now it is.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have we also got Ray there? Is Ray gonna? I've got Ray to ask a question.
Yes. Hi. I had to write it down because I'm really nervous. 1 second, please.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Phil's just crashing for a laugh. Yeah, my question was, your lyrics have really helped me out in some pretty desperate and low times. I was just wondering what keeps you motivated when you're challenged with adversity.
Ooh.
Sorry.
Well, I'm lucky because I have a creative outlet, so I can get lost in that quite easily, and that's sort of my happiest state, probably, like creating music. And I'm extra lucky because it's my job, so I can wake up in the morning after whatever, going through whatever hardship it is, and I can just bury myself in that. So that, that's incredible. And I would always encourage anyone to, have a creative hobby of any kind, because if you can lose yourself in something, regardless whether you're any good at it or whatever, it doesn't matter. It can still give you sort of a sense of connection with others and a sense of purpose, or whatever it is. Other than that, it took me a long time to learn how to open up, but that's always something that helps me no end. Just finding others that are in similar situations or have experienced similar situations to whatever the hardship is, and then discussing it. There's something deeply profound about human connection that can drag you out of the deepest places, the deepest, darkest places. And then just simple things like the toolbox. So my toolbox is yoga, mindfulness, running, cooking, gardening, the list goes on. Just wholesome shit, you need some wholesome shit in your life that you can turn to, and and if you need to just be in your own solitary place to get through something, have these little tools that you can use to make sure that you're looking after yourself and keeping balance in your life.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
I think we'll keep this moving. I think we've got a question from Chris, who you may also know.
AC in the house.
AC in the house. Hello, everybody. My question is kind of split up into two. So,
okay.
Firstly, ROU, what aspect of producing this record did you find the hardest? And number two, did you struggle at all keeping your bandmates in line, or did they cause you endless hassle?
Hardest aspect, possibly Elegy, just because it was something so different and something so scary. But I did have George Fenton, who was able to sort of guide me through it. And for those that don't know, he's an incredible composer that helped me arrange the piece after I'd written it. Hardest bit, it was probably actually the end. Rory can speak about this as well, because when we were doing that tour in Australia, Things, was that December, January, something like that, and
one of them months.
Yeah, one of the months. We were we had the deadline, and this tour was right at just before our deadline, and of course, so many things get left to the last minute, and we were just pretty much up all night, every night. So we played our show at the festival, went back to the hotel, we're up until about sort of 5 a.m. Exporting tracks to go off to all the different mixers. We had 4 different mixers on this record, and it was just laborious. And there was about 4 hours sleep in about 4 days. I think that was probably the biggest test of them all. Number 2, what was number 2? Keeping you boys in line.
Yes,
You're in line. The Iron Fist. I don't know. I think like there's
who's the troublemaker? Who's the troublemaker?
Probably you with your fucking wizardry on the fretboard there. Like that was going to be my question to you, like about the bass lines and how you go about writing them. And one thing that you always do is make really, really good, intense, busy bass lines. And I have to sort of kind of rein you in, so to speak. But like, maybe you can talk about like how you go about writing bass lines and the importance of how you perceive it.
Sure. I mean, I feel like it's obviously the demos, like when you come to us with a demo, like the foundations of like, you know, the chord progressions, a lot of that is already in place. And on a number of our tracks, obviously there is a lot of like synthesized bass, which is taking the forefront and really just like doing everything that the bottom end that it needs to. So quite often I kind of find myself coming up the neck of the bass and just trying to find something that isn't clashing. Because I mean, especially in like more recent albums, we've tried to focus on separation between instrumentation and like keeping, you know, an electronic bass sounding in its spectrum, in its frequency spectrum, exactly where it should be. So therefore I wouldn't want to put a live bass guitar down into that spectrum because it would just, you know, muddy the waters. So quite often I end up just coming up with, I guess, other melodies, and that's quite often what they turn into. And then, you know, I come and play them to you, and you give me a, yeah, that's great, man, and the other guys like it, and then I spend a lot of time recording it, and then if I think everyone's happy, and then basically ROU cuts it out at the end. And he goes, "No, Chris, do something more simple." So I go, "Okay, all right, I'll just, I'll just simplify it a little bit."
But when they do make it, when they make the cut, they're like beautiful moments. Like the bass line in like "Live Outside," for instance, is like so underrated, or just like not even like recognized. That like it's so good. I love it.
It depends who you ask, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one was again another trick in production, really, because I guess that one was kind of influenced by like Joy Division kind of style of playing bass, where it kind of followed the lead vocal, but we kind of played it in with 2 takes, and we basically panned the audio of the both takes left and right and put a load of reverb on it and just kind of created this depth of field that just like changed the track. And I remember being worried about that because I wasn't particularly sure if it was going to work.
Fucking did.
With the record, ROU, like obviously you also announced a tour like a week before, 2 weeks before it. Like, which song of these do you think you're most looking forward to playing live, like when gigs eventually happen again?
That's such a hard question, because like genuinely all of it, but that's not an answer, is it? I mean Dreamers Hotel is just gonna be nuts, I'm sure. But then like the thing is, all the tracks we released before the actual album came out, they were all like the hype moments on the records. So not necessarily like the most melodic, but the most like, I don't know, just the ones that you can't wait to play live because you just know it's going to go off, like the energy is going to be unreal. So I just, all of those, like T.I.N.A, The Great Unknown. But I'm going to end up, answering this question by saying every track eventually at the end of my answer. But yeah, because there's the more subtle moments as well that I'm just because they'll connect in a different way, and like we'll be able to connect with people just as much as the hype like energy moments. But like yeah, so the pressure's on. I'm just looking forward to singing that with everyone. And then I think as well, even things like waltzing, like both of them, like both of the waltzes, I'm really looking forward to playing live as well.
You mentioned earlier, obviously, how many sort of little nods and winks and Easter eggs there are sort of throughout the record, and people have been picking up on it. Like for everyone that's that's in this room, are there any sort of secret ones that no one's picked up on yet that you can let everyone in on?
Oh, spoilers! You after spoilers? Well, all the self-referential stuff, I would hope that everyone's noticed. Otherwise, they just need to do their revision. But yeah, I mean, the obvious one, I guess, is Crossing the Rubicon, where we drop in Labyrinth, which was completely serendipitous. For some reason, after hearing that lyric, I was like, well, hold on, maybe we could put the synth in from Labyrinth after I say the word labyrinth. And it fitted so well. And also the songs are so linked in terms of their theme, with Crossing the Rubicon being probably the most sort of positive, optimistic, kind of emboldening moment on the record, and Labyrinth being about the same sort of things, about navigating the hardships of life and being strong. And so that works so well. And then obviously there's Reprise 3, which we're bringing back finally in a sort of warped form. And there are a few other ones, but I'll let them sizzle.
So we've got another question. This one is from Waylon, who is in the United States, I believe.
Hello. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Waylon and my son Max here.
Hey.
Hiya.
I'm gonna be quick because I'll just say talking to you forever. Your podcast, it's an oldie but a goodie, but your podcast on mindfulness that came out years back. Beautiful intro for anybody who's getting involved into meditation, by the way.
Thank you.
I know you're a busy guy. Are there any other possibilities of maybe future podcasts on mindfulness or meditation in the future, or podcasts in general, maybe in the works?
I would love to do proper podcasts, and I have been thinking about it. And obviously, as with everyone, I have more time on my hands in my house now. So maybe I will try and dig that back up and start it properly again. But with the mindfulness, I'm going to be doing live streams, so like live mindfulness, like guided meditations, basically.
Oh, beautiful.
So probably starting from next week, because I figure now is probably the best time for everyone to get into it, as we're all going through this collective hardship. Why don't we all connect together over meditation, which is something that, as it sounds like can be so powerful and so helpful.
Correct. Yes. And then
I can see you now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, I looked and I was like, whoa, I'm not shutting up for you. No, that is beautiful to hear, and I hate to take anything away from the new album, which is great. But my son has one question for you too, really, really quick. Shoot it, baby.
Do you think there's gonna be like Undercover Agents Part 2? I really like it, and I kind of want, because at the end of the video, I saw Sparky was going down in flames. I kind of want to see what happens to him.
Oh, that's a really good idea, actually. Yeah, because the video does leave you just open, and you don't know what happens to Sparky in his adventures. We'll have to look into that. Yeah, get our animator on the case.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think we've got one final question. This one is from Rory, who I think should be there.
Can you hear me?
Yo.
All right, I've got my question written down. What song on the record? Oh, sorry. Hi, Rao, by the way.
Hi, Rory.
What song on the record are you most proud of, and why? Or what songs? What you know? Song or songs?
Maybe this is a bit left field, but Apocalypse Anonymous was, because it's just, it was such a different process from the other ones. It was a very like solitary, just trying loads of weird stuff and going into like such mega detail on everything in terms of the production. So just the amount of hours put into that one, I was just like quite happy that it came out like really well. Because there was one point that it wasn't even gonna make the album. There was about 3 interlude ideas that we had going, I think. Because there was the one after The Great Unknown, there was one after T.I.N.A, and I think people will end up hearing these live. But yeah, I think that I'm glad that one made it, because it was just intense.
Well, that was like a full ROU production, mixing, everything, wasn't it? You didn't master it. That's the only thing you didn't do. No,
I didn't master it. Yeah, big up Prash, who mastered the album and did a sterling job.
Yeah, that's pretty big up actually now. Like, they're like, when they're like 3 tracks that you mix in the album, like Elegy, Apocalypse, and the last waltz.
Piangevale.
Huh?
Piangevale. It's probably not a very good pronunciation at all, but yeah, Waltz 2, let's call it that.
Yeah, Waltz 2, yeah. Which is, I think it's a masterpiece of production, by the way. So.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Do you want to talk about the guitar production whilst you're here? About the insane amount of pedals? I just have an image burned in my mind of just pedal-ageddon. Just so many guitar pedals from Dan and...
Because normally, like, live, I don't even have a pedal board live, so I don't really stock that many pedals, but Dan and George luckily have like a load of pedals to play with. So we just set up like, there's just a whole table full of pedals that we just chain through and just play around with. But I mean, one interesting thing about guitar production actually was that we started off, when we started the record, started tracking, like the first half of the recording session, we were just using like Orange amps, because that was just like, I just managed to borrow some Orange amps from Orange, because like I said, I just used a Kemper all the time, wanted some real amps to play with. We used like a load of Orange amps, and then that was really fun. But then like halfway through the production, we got Archetype Nolly like plugin, which is like an amp simulator, and we ended up just switching pretty much purely to that. We didn't really use real amps after that. Just, it's such an amazing plugin. A lot, like 50% of the guitar sounds on that record is just this Archetype Nolly, which I would recommend anyone checking out if they're into that kind of thing.
Purists would hate that, wouldn't they? Like there was no air being pushed.
I know. I've never understood the air pushing thing. It's like, I don't know. Like, I mean, if it sounds good, it sounds good, and then
digital guitars.
Yeah, exactly. Bit of that. I mean, and the other great thing about that is that you can track your guitar, and then you can go back afterwards and just completely change the sound. So you're not like committing to that one sound. It just gives like more flexibility. It also means you can just record guitars at home, just on your laptop, that sound good enough to put out on a Shikari 6th album. For example.
I think there's a wider point there that like everyone assumes that like, big speakers, like the bands that have like 20 million speakers on stage is better, louder is better. When like the loudest you're going to get, yeah, as a rock band is about 120 decibels, which is loud. It's loud enough to probably deafen you if you're like right up against the speaker for a whole gig, but it's not as loud as like stuff in nature. There's a shrimp, an underwater shrimp, a snapping shrimp that that snaps. It pulses like, I don't know, it's whatever. But it's a bit of its anatomy, and it reaches like 200 decibels. So it's like people think they're hard and they're loud. It's just like, nah, you're not. You're not as loud as a shrimp.
Never going to be as loud as a shrimp.
No. So therefore, you go for quality, don't you? Over volume or air being pushed, or we do anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to leave it. Not as loud as a shrimp, you know. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us all around the world. If we could get you to sort of wave or throw the horns or something, there's going to be a little picture taken of you all. Amazing. Yeah, thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you, ROU, for joining us. If you head over to the Kerrang website now, there's loads more Shikari content you can read. And yeah, make some noise on your muted microphones for ROU.
I've only just switched it to gallery view. Oh my god, it's well intimidating. Hello everyone, you beautiful people. Big up everyone with the backgrounds as well. I tried to do you saw me, didn't you, Luke, when I tried to do the background on our test and it just covered my face.
Yeah,
for some reason my computer doesn't let me.
It looks good though. Your background looks good. Cool. Thank you everyone.